Hello and welcome to Michael and Ivanka's Grand Podcast, a weekly public therapy session where we talk about our opinions on big ideas, but also try and remember that we could be wrong. That's my goal this week. My name's Michael Forrest.
And I'm Ivanka Magic. This week we shall be talking about kindness.
Kindness, you say? What aspects of kindness are there to discuss, would you say?
There's the absence of kindness that seems to be in today's society, or at the moment. We could talk about the fact that kindness makes you feel better, being kind to other people, and that's a scientific fact.
Proven in trials. We'll find out. We'll dig into that.
Proven in research. Things like loving kindness meditations came up. We talked about that in happiness. Oh, and then there's nursery. Nursery tells children to be kind all the time. I get told by my child that, "Mummy, that was not kind," when I tell her that she has to go to bed. I think you'll find that it is kind.
I think there's a power dynamic to kindness that I've struggled with. I think there's, like random acts of kindness is a thing, isn't it? My grandmother was all about kindness, even though she was quite stern.
No messing.
All right.
Yes, so we're having a bit of a gentle start to this podcast recording.
We're going to do it. Well, it's always a bit tough to get going, and I didn't have a huge list.
No.
Okay, well, let's do this.
Let's do it. How was your week, Michael?
My week was, I had a few things. The biggest thing was Sharon was away, so I spent 3 full solid days rearranging my studio and trying to make it symmetrical and photogenic. And I think I was successful. I'm quite excited about it. Also usable. I had post-it notes on the wall. What are the activities I do in there? What is the nature of those activities? Some things you sort of, what is the sort of dynamic between how visible I want something to be versus how accessible I need it to be? You know, lots of different questions. I bought some furniture from IKEA, and I sort of set that up, but then I had some colour problems. I had this one big bookshelf that I kind of wanted to use, but it was sort of the only sort of wooden thing in the room, so I ended up spending like 2 hours. I didn't want to wait for the paint to dry if I painted it black, so I got some black fabric and like tacked it on there, which took forever, but then I didn't have to wait for it to dry afterwards. So the front of it looks very nice, that's facing the camera, but the back side of it's a little bit, rough, but that's fine.
How long did the tacking the fabric on take?
Like a couple of hours. It was annoying. But
all it meant was that you had something to do for the 2 hours rather than waiting 2 hours for the paint to dry.
Is that how long? I don't know how paint takes to dry, if I'm honest with you.
You said it took a couple of hours. I didn't want to wait a couple of hours.
Okay, I did, but I was assuming I'd have to leave it overnight or something.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
So
okay,
I don't know.
Yes.
It already had a finish on it, so maybe I'd have had to do 2 coats. And I was like, I'm just going to... And I quite like the aesthetic of it as well. And it's nice to have a soft thing. It sort of goes with the wall a little bit.
Yeah. Good.
And I'm very excited. It's nearly done. And the back wall I was struggling with. And then I thought, well, why don't I just put all of my things that I've made up on the wall? Like all the album artwork and all the... bits of projects that, I don't know, I've even got a couple of Ubuntu CDs on there.
Have you?
If you can imagine that.
I've still got a couple of Ubuntu CDs waiting around.
Yeah, well, I sort of took some CDs out and sort of put them on the shelf instead of, like, lots of stuff that I've been carrying around in boxes for years and years that's all just like little scraps of things. I just emptied everything out and just, reassessed the organisation of everything.
Wow.
I had a fun chat. I had an interesting chat with an Uber driver on Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
Somalian Uber driver, and he told me about, why he'd left Somalia and just how he was just sort of scared you could just get shot in the street, so he kind of like left. And I tried to be a good English person and say, people are making you feel welcome. And he told me about sort of how it's a Muslim country, so everyone has to drink in secret. So you on Thursday night, so Friday's the weekend. So on Thursday night, you lock your front door, put the key somewhere, and then sort of sneak a little bottle of beer and kind of have that. And he also told me about how there's just marijuana just growing on all the verges of the roads, so people just sort of plant it there and then just go and pick it and then sort of smoke the hashish. So I sort of had an interesting, little chat there.
Did you tell him about our podcast?
I didn't know.
I told a taxi driver about our podcast this week.
Oh, was he? Did you subscribe him or just?
I couldn't. He was driving, so he was a bit busy. But I did. He did repeat the name back to me a couple of times, so you might listen. We had a nice chat about hope.
Mm. I also listened to the whole of Malcolm Gladwell's podcast, which is very good. It's sort of like 2 seasons of like 6 or 7 episodes or something, and lots of thoughts and ideas came out of that, and even some sort of potential kind of issues with some of our conclusions. Not too much, but
what?
yeah,
Are
so
you
I'd
suggesting
recommend that.
we might be wrong?
I'm suggesting we might be wrong. No, well, there was one, we talked about humour and if you're going to tell the truth, do it with comedy. And he was talking about the trouble with, that some very popular comedians that have done that on sort of American television, and then afterwards have sort of said, it didn't work though.
No.
About whether or not it actually works, and also how toothless Saturday Night Live kind of gets, where Tina Fey's Sarah Palin impression is do the satire, but then don't get Sarah Palin on to bring her in on the joke, like what the hell, so it's sort of. So I think I don't think we're talking about being quite so toothless, but also talked about some Israeli satire on there that just, I think if you're going to do it, you have to just go hard, and you can't kind of pull any punches. It can still be funny, but you just got to really kind of.
Yeah, I did listen to that episode, and it made me think about our media episode where we were going, hey, be funny. Make people listen. But I think part of the point that he was making was that at first listen, it's funny, and then it isn't.
Yeah.
Then it's like, I mean, my the thing it reminded me of listening to that was the way, because I think there's a couple of things about this. Like, you do actually need to stop and think about these things, and there's a superficial listening or reading of anything, and then there's the pausing to think about it thing. One of the films we used to watch over and over again in my family was Coming to America. But my father thought it was hilarious, or he would always make us stop and listen to things like when I can't remember the Eddie Murphy character's name, but he'd stand on the balcony and go, look, how free is this country, America? People can throw garbage everywhere. And it's that sort of like, then we'd have to have, being brought up in my house, you'd then have to have a conversation about what it means, what the author was trying to say. But there is a bit of that, things to make you laugh superficially. Have you been watching Cunk on Britain?
I know, I'm not a huge fan of that character, so I think we sort of started it, but I just think it's a bit forced. But is there some good stuff there?
There are some good bits, definitely, of that, and it is properly holding up a mirror to...
Okay. Well, I just felt it was a bit on the Ali G side at times. It's just like I'm saying something to sort of annoy an academic, but it's not really achieving anything, was my feeling. But I'll give it a second look.
I'm not sure that they're not in on it.
Well, I mean, they're sort of in on it, but they're not funny people themselves, are they? So it's sort of whether or not it's still a bit like...
Well, I thought, anyway, I don't think that's the... Anyway, I think it's quite
I'll
good
give it a
little...
look if you're
But I did listen to the Malcolm Gladwell thing after you
How many?
mentioned it. I didn't do a full binge, but I probably did 4 or 5. I enjoyed the basketball one.
Yeah.
I did listen to the satire one.
What was it about the basket? Because I sent you to the basketball one,
you
right?
did.
And I'm trying to remember why now.
It was about it was about the fact that even if we know something is a better way of doing something, you have to be a particular kind of person to go against the grain.
There was something in there that, for me, it was about that threshold conversation of how many people need to be doing something for me or you to be doing something, and I yeah, it kind of made me think like, am I that brave? I kind of think of myself as sort of fairly individualistic and sort of coming to my own conclusions. But then when I think of my artistic output, I do have a little bit of I kind of want to see that someone else is doing something a bit like it before I fully commit. But maybe I should just, I mean, that's probably a limiting thing to do. But also, people, what we're doing with this and some ideas we're talking about on this is like, it's good that we've got each other to bounce off at least. So that's like a threshold of 1 in some cases. I think my threshold is 1. It's like, even if that 1 is sometimes someone a bit abrasive, but then that gives me, not you, but someone that can give me permission to then say what I would otherwise be afraid to say. But I sort of want to be a 0. It's like, what's the point of being a 1 threshold person? Like, you're losing out on all the benefits of being like a 10 threshold person, but not really getting any of the benefits of being that 0 person.
Well, I think we need to say what the threshold thing is.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Which
yeah,
is,
like how many people you have to see doing something to copy,
I
to do it.
have said it. I love the example of like your granny would probably wait till everybody she knows was demonstrating on the streets before she joined in.
Yeah, whereas, threw a rock.
Or threw a rock, that was the example. Yeah. But I thought, what was interesting to me was the way it applied to. So obviously, I thought about it in the context of demos I've been on and things I have done, or sort of the level of activism, for lack of a better word, that I'm willing to participate in. Like, I'm not going to give up my whole lifestyle and become sleep in my van in order to. I'm not. That's too far for me. But then I don't know to what degree society would need to degrade for me to do. Just don't know. So I was thinking about my own participation in political statements, demos, and I've been to some very, very small demos. So I think on some topics my threshold is quite low, but I'm not going to start throwing rocks that easily. Actually throwing rocks, but what struck me as interesting was this example of this basketball player. So the example he used was the fact that if you do an underarm throw for your 3 points in basketball, you're much more accurate than if you do an overarm throw. And an overarm throw, though, is stylish, and an underarm throw is counted as a granny throw, for lack of that was the phrase used. Yeah. And the fact that even though statistically everybody knows that an underarm throw will get you loads more points, you will have a much better hit rate, people don't want to do it. They don't want to be the person doing it. And I was thinking about this in the context of looking after the environment. We're on a lots of people have recycled for many years, but the majority of people haven't recycled for many years. The majority of people haven't been thoughtful about how much plastic they consume. Do you know what I mean? So but I think the threshold, but it takes a David Attenborough to put a TV show on where a seahorse is clutching to a plastic straw, and suddenly there is a big shift of, it's no longer hippies that worry about plastic. Now everybody worries about plastic. So I think I do think there's something interesting in that idea that is presented.
And it's social proof as well, but certainly I think if I just saw someone else with a keep cup, or people see someone else with a keep cup or something, then they're going to feel a lot more like, because it's that sort of school children thing as well. It's like, you've got to have the right trainers, you've got to have the right like bag, or I don't know, that you kind of, there's that kind of like anxiety of conformity that it's hard to, and whether or not, and it's also kind of like whether or not you're too poor to be able to have the good shoes, or like
in my childhood and upbringing, I was often the kid with the wrong shoes. So it's like I think that, and the example of that basketball player that they gave that did the underarm throw, it was his father that sort of went, no, son, they'll not be laughing if you're hitting a 93% hit rate, so it's that being like my dad used to say to me. I remember coming home going, oh, I got a B on a maths test, but don't worry, nobody got an A. It was really hard. It's like, I'm not really interested in anybody else. Like, why didn't you get an A? But, there's something about learning about thresholds and doing something because it's right.
Yeah. This is a problem. This is something I was told about sort of advertising music. You need that the social proof. The best way to get someone to listen to what I'm doing would be to have someone they trust tell them that it was acceptable to enjoy it.
To like it.
So I think people kind of like they're like, and in fact, like someone at work sort of sent me his sort of spoken word narrative project that he's doing. He's like done sort of hip hop stuff in the past, but now he's sort of doing this, and he's sort of telling these stories, and it's really, really earnest, but then has some slightly sort of silly stuff going on at the same time. So I thought I was just loving it because it was so earnest, but sort of really funny as well. And then I sort of started saying that to him. I was like, I think it's really like funny what you've done here. And he was like, and then I sort of had this, oh no, what if he didn't mean it to be funny? What have I just said? And then sort of thinking about that in terms of what people, and mine's so much more subtly, you're supposed to laugh at it, but like it probably is completely, you have no idea. But even there, where I thought it was pretty black and white that this was the reaction I was supposed to have and allowed to have, when I sort of went to him, he sort of gave me permission to, find it funny, but he hadn't done that deliberately at all. But I mean, that's talking to the artist. That's a different thing but he did say other people had sort of said similar things as well. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one thing I learned from talking to Andre about art so much was that you don't have to like it. The fundamental, that sort of like if you're looking at if you're walking around an art gallery, I think places like art galleries are very intimidating because I think we are led to believe, rightly or wrongly, that you need to have a degree of knowledge in the subject matter in order to fully appreciate and enjoy it. But without that, you are allowed to go, do you know what, I don't really like this, or I really like this. I don't know why. I can't explain the juxtaposition of images or the use of colour or the clever brushstrokes, but I like this, and that's okay. I don't care.
Yeah, art is a prickly one for people to feel confident to actually express their opinions, and there's a lot of Emperor's New Clothes going on, I think.
But I think this sort of social proof and what does everybody think is quite... And I do think that it leads us into kindness.
Yeah, okay.
Quite happily.
Oh, well, do you want to tell me about your week, though?
Oh, yes, I could tell you about my week. On the subject of the constant war against plastic, I have purchased I've been looking for a soap dish.
Okay.
Because bars of soap are the best way to not have a plastic container in your house for your shower gel.
Yeah, we changed that.
And but I've got a problem with soggy bars of soap. I don't like it. And all my memories of the pre-shower gel life was scuzzy soap dishes. But I found one that suctions onto the wall and is made of metal and white, so the soap can go back in it and water can drip out, and there's no reason for the soap to be sitting there getting soggy. I am delighted.
I like my soap. Thing is, like, we've got a couple of... Sharon's been on the soap dish thing, but there's a certain point with a bar of soap where I kind of want the bottom of it to be a little bit kind of sitting in some water for a bit so I can stick it to the next bar of soap. Like that's the only problem when there's too much drainage. It's hard to like start, sticking those bars of soap together.
What am I gonna do?
So like when the soap's getting older, I'll kind of put it on the edge of the bath, and then so that it'll be ready by the next shower. Stick it to the. I don't think Sharon's aware of this, and so she keeps tidying it up probably. But I'm like, Sharon, I'm doing something.
I'm engineering a solution. Yes, so that was my. So yes, we're slowly but surely moving over to a soap only environment in our house.
Mm.
But there's a few hand soap dispensers to use up before we can fully commit.
I was in a billionaire's penthouse this week,
Well,
and his hand soap was wonderful. It's the best hand soap I've ever smelled.
Really?
It was in a big sort of square container. It didn't have any branding on it, so I don't know what it was, but it was just, it was one of these kind of bathrooms where there's individual little kind of hand towels that you just take one and then throw it in a basket after you've dried your hands, kind of thing. It was
in his house, not in a hotel.
Well, it was it's sort
or a
of
bar.
It's a little hotel-ish. This place,
Right.
like there's kind of a conference table. So I think, but it's just this penthouse by the Design Museum. But that was some fragrant hand soap, I have to say. All right, so kindness.
Kindness.
Are you a kind person?
I think I am. I think I've been unkind to people in the past and felt bad about it and tried to not do it again.
How do you know when you're being unkind?
Well, I think I know because I feel bad.
Right.
But sometimes they cry.
I mean...
That's usually a good indicator. There's something about being in an office, in a work environment, that sometimes, even though I am conscious that, for example, somebody might be having a very tough time in their private life and you need to cut them some slack, there is also something in me that says, if there's something going on with you that prevents you from doing your job effectively, then you might need to withdraw for a bit and deal with what's going on and then come back, or make it clear that you can't do the thing that you would normally be able to do, and ask us ahead of time and then we'll help. But, that sort of being let down by somebody, and on the one hand feeling very sympathetic because I know something's going on, but on the other hand going, I'm sorry, but now we're all fucked.
Yeah.
The project's gone wrong for everybody now. So I find it a bit difficult to then not let my anger be visible, or my disappointment.
Yeah, you try and give someone the benefit of the doubt, and you sort of say, I'm sure there's. I kind of say, like, I'm sure there's some reason for this. I'm sure, but you just have to say, look. But when someone sort of like is dropping the ball a bit, but then they're not even sort of asking for forgiveness for that. They're not even sort of acknowledging that. And if it sort of keeps going, you're kind of like, you do tend to get a bit stretched on like how much doubt you want to give them. But as soon as someone sort of like acknowledges, I don't know, sometimes I can be kind up to a certain point, but then the anger takes over and I kind of need them to sort of admit like some sort of accountability in the equation just to let me kind of reset a bit.
Yeah. I distinctly remember making a project manager cry and then later finding out, because I wasn't particularly, I'd not worked with her before, and later finding out that her partner had cancer, and I was like, now I feel really bad, but if you'd have just told me that you couldn't do the thing that you were going to do, I would have been very sympathetic. I'm happy to I'm happy to help, but so I felt really awful. Sometimes I am kind to avoid that horrible feeling of knowing that that I have been unkind. Perhaps we're missing a definition of what being kind is.
What is kindness?
What is it?
You've got to be cruel to be kind.
Yeah, that kind of statement made me think. That was what I was thinking when you said, they're getting a bit teary, but I do need to tell you this because you need to... I'm telling you this, like my child telling me it's unkind to tell her to go to bed on time.
Sometimes it's kinder to, to tell someone how they're affecting you than it is to just sort of like be angry at them and not tell them.
Yeah. I think kind has an implication that you could be angry with them, but you're choosing not to judge why they're in the situation they're in. You're helping them not be there.
You think it's angry? Do you think that's...
I don't know. It's like...
angry or just any negative... I mean, you could be like disgusted, or you could be...
Yeah, that's true.
There's other sort of negative emotions, I suppose. That it's a decision not to kind of take that negative emotion out on someone. But even, I guess, that they're making you feel, that they could be making you feel. It's a decision to kind of like protect them from sort of what they're doing to you, just to kind of give them a bit of space. So my issue with kindness, it's hard to be kind from when if you feel like you're coming from a position of weakness, when you don't feel like you're coming from like, who am I to, you don't feel like you can be kind unless you feel like you've got some sort of high ground or something in the first place. Otherwise you're just being, I don't know what it is, if you know, if you don't have the power in the equation.
I remember being in my early 20s and having I think I was much less kind or more likely to be unkind when I was younger, and more likely to judge people. So I remember having this boss who, she used to, and bearing in mind this was maybe my second programming job, so I was very low down the pecking order. And as far as I was concerned, she was getting paid loads of money. She was the manager. She was my manager's manager, but she was always moaning and crying. Yeah. And I was just like, look, I get, you're having some problems, but you're at work now. And I don't care. I think that's it. Like, I was like, I don't really care about you. It's not my job to care about your problems. I don't care about you. So, but maybe now, I think as I've got older, it's just, I think I'm just more aware that, for example, somebody can be very high in a position of power in your life, and on the surface of it be, wealthy, set up, but just maybe suffering from depression or having some sort of a thing where you still can be kind to that person, even though they're in the, in a power structure. They sort of they kind of don't deserve your kindness. Is possibly a very stupid thing to say, but do you know what I mean? Like, you don't owe them kindness, but if you truly are a kind person, then you should be kind to them.
There's like you said, judgment there, and I sort of almost think like kindness is sometimes making you could just close the book on someone, couldn't you? Go, that's them. And so, but being kind is sometimes, okay, I'm going to keep the book open for a bit longer and kind of give them a chance to redeem themselves, or see if there's some level on which we can kind of go a bit further, and I don't just have to sort of But never mind.
It's like, so you read about all these councils coming up with solutions to stop rough sleepers, like spikes in doorways and, extra. Oh, yeah, but they do stuff like this. And that's fundamentally, in my view, never mind anything else, it's unkind. That is not kind. Because when you look and speak to somebody who is sleeping rough on the streets, something has happened to that person to get them to that position in life, and you can't ignore that. I found something that makes noise.
It's good. There's it's like vilifying drug use, as opposed to treating it as an illness, or a choice, and it's sometimes it's just ignorance that leads to that unkindness, and maybe you don't know you're being unkind because you don't know that you're ignorant about something.
That's true.
But for the person having suddenly their little kind of tent pitch has spikes in its way, it's like thanks.
Awful. Because there's BBC Three made a TV show which I think is on a repeat. It's still ongoing. That's filmed with female rough sleepers in Brighton.
Right.
I watched the first episode because somebody who does the social care for rough sleepers told me about it, and I just sat there. I just cried. It's so sad. These yes, a lot of them were taking drugs. They were, there was all sorts of things, but they didn't get there out of nothing. It's like they're not doing it just for a laugh because they're gonna, I don't know, get free benefits.
It's the cheapest and only way to deal, like drugs are kind of the last resort of, it's the only way that you don't feel like, horrible.
Yeah. So
it's like, if you need to lean on that if you're in a comfortable situation. But it's kind of your only resort. It's the cheapest way to kind of feel, short term, feel a bit better about yourself, but the problem is it's sort of like quite damaging as well, like, and it damages your chances of getting out of that
I like the fact that kindness is associated with generosity in that,
Right.
Because I think you can be emotionally generous, you can be generous with your time, like instead of
Yeah.
tutting when somebody's at the till and they've dropped their money or their kid's screaming, just not tutting is kind. Even that is the beginning of kindness. You could offer to help them, but if you don't want to extend your kindness that far, simply not rolling your eyes and tutting
What
is a
do you
good
do
start.
when the guy rolling his eyes and tutting is a homeless man behind you in the queue? Which happened to me the other day.
You still
It was
go,
like, fuck's sake, Jesus! I'm like, I don't know what to. I'm just gonna do.
were you
what
the
I'm
one
doing.
that was slow packing?
No, I was the person in front of me that was being slow, and then I was there, and then this guy, I don't know.
Well,
it
I
was
think what's hard, there's this scale. There's being, there's not tutting, there's offering to help the person, and then there's defending the circle. And I think each of us are different. We have I am more and more teaching myself to be the person that goes, can I help? Shall I hold the baby while you do that, or whatever it is? I am not always brave enough to turn around to the tutter and go, what? And there's even quite a few videos going on at the moment and instructions that say, for example, if you are on a bus and you see somebody being racially abused or attacked or something, the best thing to do is actually to talk to the person, the victim,
right,
not the aggressor, because it disempowers them. So you sort of say to them, hi,
gives them
how
something
are you?
else to do.
It's just basically, you okay? Can I come and sit next to you, or whatever it, just to sort of, but give your full attention to the victim. Maybe that's why actually turning around to the tutting person isn't the thing to do, because that in itself is quite an aggressive act.
Yeah. There's no way that's gonna.
I think my
kinda go
sister's
smoothly.
much braver than me in this context. She's more likely to go, what's your problem?
Well, we get back to that sort of like, are you going to change anyone's mind by like, you need to also be in a mindset where you're actually trying to change their mind rather than just trying to kind of tit for, I'm going to make you feel bad in exchange, to get you back,
Yeah. Whereas actually just helping the person who's struggling. Nick and I were walking out of Brighton Station the other day, and a lady had stopped and was sort of clearly in pain. She was holding on to a bike rack, and I was like, are you okay? She just said, yeah, it's just my back after I've sat on the train for a long time. It takes me a while to get moving. But, I do. So she didn't want any help, but we paused for a second and said, can we? But it can be a bit, and I think people get sometimes taken aback if you offer to help them. Like, no. So maybe something about kindness, being generous without expecting reciprocity.
Yeah.
So that it's like not a transaction. It's just a one-way, here, I'm going to help you.
Yeah, but that's how do you kind of like let the other person know that you're not expected? How do you kind of enter a situation with, you sort of need a badge that says, I'm not, I don't want anything. Or could you say, like, I don't know how socially you do that. You just kind of, without just, I don't know, it feels a bit like weird.
Well, I think it's a bit about, so, in this sort of context, there's something about you not needing to be thanked. So, for example, in that sort of random act of kindness, like I think in San Francisco, they do a thing where you can sort of pay forward for a crossing on the Golden Gate Bridge. Okay. So it's sort of, the person in receipt of the random act of kindness, or this pay forward things people do in coffee shops where you can pay ahead of time and a homeless person can come in and have a free coffee and that kind of thing. They don't know that it was you, Michael Forrest, or you, Bank Magic. It's just anonymous. It's just like a faceless. It's just somebody in the world has done something nice for me, and So I think there's a bit. I mean, obviously, if you're seeing somebody struggling with a bag, help. You can't anonymize that other than to just help them and then go bye.
Just not tell them your name.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell them a fake name.
Or just not get into that. Here you go. Right, have a nice time. I remember my sister.
By the way, I'm Steve.
Yeah. If you want to thank Steve in tomorrow's no. But I think there's this. Why I think kindness is relevant. So we got to kindness because we were talking about trust. We were like, right, the next obvious topic is clearly kindness. And there's something, there are examples of an absence of kindness in our government at the moment and the way things are working. Like this whole thing about the Windrush generation of people who have been here their whole lives or come here as children and are suddenly, as we've discussed previously, in this society where you don't have an ID card, being asked to prove something that they can't prove. And I read a headline that said that apparently Theresa May in 2013 was recorded saying, look, we'll deport everybody first and then sort it out via appeals.
Like, Jesus Christ.
That's just like, you've got to laugh because that is just cruel. That is just a total absence. It's not just an absence of kindness. You're not being that passive person in the queue. You are definitely tutting, if not pushing them over. It's like, you've dropped all your change on the floor. Let me help you with that shoulder barge.
How fucking expensive it is to move house to another country. Like, it's ridiculous.
Well, if before that you got put in a detention centre and deported, chances are you've probably lost your house. You know what I mean? It's not that.
It's fucking blind. It's
maybe empathy. Have we done empathy?
Something. Well, it's a part of a lot of the discussions we've had. I was just thinking about that there is that thing of like a bureaucrat, someone in a bureaucratic organisation in a position of power that when they're kind, that I think that can change people's lives when they just go, because you've got a choice. You go, well, where is this document that you officially need, and they're sometimes in a position to go, that's cool, and that can be kind of beautiful. That can be, and
that is the ultimate. Hi, let me help you pick up your shopping. Or here's your coin.
And I think with all the kind of top-down mandates, cruel mandates from your Theresa Mays, the people on the ground, you can't take away the fact that they will be face to face with someone, and that kindness will come through, and it has to. There's no way it can't.
There's a woman called Kit Collingwood who does a lot of work for government, and she wrote a blog post about the fact that civil servants need to have empathy as a civil servant. I'll share that. That's quite an interesting read because she talks about exactly that. She says her article's called "Why Civil Servants Should Become Experts in Empathy." Whatever the policy mandate is, bringing empathy into the civil service and making sure people pause before they sort of execute a policy without empathy.
Yeah, well, but you get the two different types of people. There's the one is like, it's okay. The other side is, sorry, there's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do. My hands are tied. And some people sort of revel in that, don't they? But I don't know if you can. I don't know. I'll have to read this thing, but I don't know how much you can teach that.
Well, I haven't read it for ages, and I can't remember I just remember that she wrote it. So I will also. So you just reminded me of it when you talked about mandates. But it is that and even doing something that is adhering to. It's like, in this modern world that we live in, we are required to, if you employ somebody, if you go, you've always got to take your passport now and prove that you have the right to work. You can't just go, Michael Forrest, born in Nottingham, therefore...
London, actually, Hammersmith.
London. Sorry. Michael Forrest, born in Hammersmith. On the... No. Father's... No. Of course. Yes, of course I can work here. It's we're policing each other, which is a bit weird, I think. But to Malcolm Gladwell's threshold thing, I don't think it's a far leap from us all policing each other. I read another article about the Windrush thing this morning, which said that in a post-Brexit world, they're this banking on immigration as a way of supporting things. Like, look, we're sorting out the Windrush generation. Look, we're being tough on immigration. They hadn't anticipated the public backlash, because Britain does not really, in its heart, consider itself to be a racist, anti-immigrant country. So, and if you look, and suddenly by looking at these people who have faces, who are British, who you live next door to, who have been a nurse in the NHS for 50 years, all this kind of stuff, suddenly this idea of deporting people becomes very distasteful, and it makes people feel really bad. I don't know if you can be too kind. I don't know. It's a good question, because so the kind of things that are coming into my head are those kind of people who martyr themselves to other, and you're like, look, you don't have to do this for everybody, or you don't have to, like, if you're away on holiday with a group of friends and one person just insists on doing all the cooking and doing all the work, like they just become this person that's there to just, you're like, well hang on a minute, it's your holiday too. You don't have to do this. You can say no. That's not being unkind. You've still got to be kind to yourself.
That's it. Yeah, that's something that I wanted to talk about. Like, being kind to yourself is sometimes the hardest person it is to be kind to for some people. I know some very kind people that are very, very unkind to themselves.
Yeah.
But before we sort of unpack that anymore, I just something that, going back to the sort of too kind thing, is like, does it always require resources to be kind?
Well, that's what I was talking about in terms of like time.
Yeah, so time is one. A reason,
it tends to be time, money. Sometimes the time can be a fraction. Just smiling at somebody who's looking sad, or whatever. Well, one of the things that always struck me about my husband was, from the very early of meeting, very early on when I met him, if he stops and helps people, somebody with a puncture, you all right there, mate? Do you need a hand? Somebody, he'll just always stop, and it's just what he does. So I don't think his kindness is of any less value just because. No, but it's habitual.
But that's action. I mean, the action doesn't just come for free. Like, he's got to stop and take time out of his day and do something. So, sure. That's. I don't know how small something would have to be for you to be able to.
I think what's hard in terms of modern living is walking down the street and noticing. Sometimes you just. If somebody's just dropped something, it's kind of a reflex to go, oh, sorry, I think you just dropped this. And that's, still being helpful and kind, but not really. But, you can, headphones on, head down, boom, march, and not notice people around you who need a smile or a hand, or are struggling with a bag. Or it's amazing how much people will, if you're out with a pushchair, how often you have to ask somebody to help you up and down steps. It's just that I find that remarkable, because I don't know. It's like,
I kind of find it annoying when people thank me for holding a door open for them or something, but then I think I find it annoying if they don't as well. But I'm like, well, what was I going to do? Just let it slam in your face, idiot?
Yeah, but you're...
Like, if I want to help, like, it's like, if you see someone that there's no one else around and you help them up the thing with the pushchair, it's like, well, you weren't going to fucking get that thing up there anyway on your own. So, I've been kind, but I've helped. But I mean, what was I supposed to do? Just walk past and
but people do walk past.
Well, yes, they do. That's why. Well, in my example, it's like there's definitely no one else around, and there's no kind of like social proof needed. Like, but yeah, I think like if there's lots of people walking, I don't know if that guy behind you is your husband. It's like, it's one of those things where I don't know.
I think you're being. I can't decide
Well, I'm
who
trying to
you're
be
being
defensive
hard to
about not
yourself.
helping.
Yeah. Oh, is that why you're being defensive about not helping
Yeah, yeah.
people with pushchairs?
With pushchairs, yeah.
Oh,
Well,
well.
that's part of it.
Oh, I see. But I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't need everybody to help. It's just one person. And if,
Yeah, every time. Why are you coming out if you can't deal with a flipping pushchair on your own, Ivanka? Jeez. Why do I have to take time out of my day?
Well, you clearly don't.
Clearly not.
No.
Well, no, just the fact you're surprised that no one stops. I'm like, oh, I mean...
I am surprised. I don't see. You've got a person with a buggy. I've always had, or like an old granny trying to get off or anybody trying to get off a train with a heavy suitcase, or it's like, yeah, you can take you shouldn't be out if you can't carry your own
Why
suitcase.
did you bring such a heavy bloody suitcase?
But it's even if it wasn't that heavy, it's still easier if two people carry it down than one.
I don't know. Why is that sort of triggering my kind of entitlement alarms? I don't know. Like, I could just go out. It's because I'm such a independent person. I expect nothing from anyone. I will just assemble an IKEA bookshelf on my own in an awkward corner, even if it takes me an extra hour, rather than go and knock on someone's door and ask for help. And it's sort of, I guess that's what it sort of triggers a little bit of well, what the, if you can't be independent, what, shoot lower. It kind of sets that off a bit. But I'm sure I would be a happier person if I did allow myself to kind of rely on hopefully someone else helping once in a while.
Yeah, but you see, I think that's quite an interesting, the asking for help thing. So I know a few people who are very kind, or nice people who never ask for help. And, we can all suffer along, but why? Why suffer along if you could just go...
asking for help.
Why? What's wrong with asking for help?
It's just, I just don't like it. Don't know why. It's therapy time.
It is therapy time.
What happened in your past that made you
not ask for
unable
help?
to ask for help?
Like,
don't know.
Just go, excuse me, could somebody...
I'll just do it. I'll just do it. I'll be fine.
Think about it differently. Think about what an opportunity you're giving somebody to feel good because they've helped you. I think I have had that conclusion
before, but then, it's a gift for you to get
say,
the other side of my... Even though I'm not paying you.
Would you like to feel better? Yeah, help me with my pushchair. I can make you happy. Because, that's proved by science. That if you help me, it's going to make you feel happy. It's your lucky, lucky day.
They're definitely going to feel like I've got a pyramid scheme for them if I start an interaction like that. Well, I mean, most people aren't very good at spotting pyramid schemes, so maybe I should just assume that they're...
Oh, dear. So it's I think it's that. So this, the Oxford University paper that I read at great speed this morning going, oh my God, I haven't done enough research about kindness. Oh, quick. Basically said, people are sociable animals, and helping each other, being kind, random acts of kindness, helping each other are a way of building connections. So if I'm making friends with a new person or somebody, asking for help and giving help is a way of helping us, create more connections.
And this is something, I've taken to, I'm going to build an app that reinforces that. But I think I've spent all my time thinking about the giving side and never really devoted any thought to the receiving side and the psychology of that. I have a really hard, I've kind of a hard time accepting any help of any sort. And I think a lot of people have some degree of that, so that's what kind of makes it hard to kind of make these things work as well.
I mean I'm as independent as the next person, but I think things like my back going made me, out of sheer necessity, go, excuse me, could you pass that down to me, or could you carry this for I wouldn't necessarily ask a stranger to carry something, because I was like, I can carry everything, I can do everything, I can pick everything up, I don't need your help. And certainly small children have that. I can do it myself. 6 hours later, still no socks. But I think it's not a sign of weakness asking. Well, I suppose it is. My back
Or is it a
weak.
sign of wanting to do a little bit more? Is it a sign of vision? Of being able to conceive of something larger than yourself?
Go, please help me. Yeah, I don't know.
No, this is something I hadn't even... Yeah, this is a new thing that I hadn't really noticed about. Yeah, it's just the fact that I was like, buy a shiv and taking a pushchair onto the bus, for the love of Christ. Well, that's a weird reaction, isn't it? Like, flipping hell, the entitlement of this woman. Why is my outrage voice is like Winston Churchill's voice? So here's a new section of the podcast that I want to do every week, or as regularly as possible. I want to start just seeing if we've got some ideas of some things we could actually do, or that we could if we could get enough people interested, things that we might be able to do in the world and problems that we might want to try and solve. What is the biggest problem that, like Elon Musk goes, right, climate change, what can I do? Like, find the biggest problem. Or maybe it's like find a slightly smaller problem and make a more far-reaching solution to it.
Look at the it's so hard to get help on a grander scale. You've got to access the welfare state, some of which might take time, it might not be appropriate, you might just need to find a group of people, and everything is so siloed, and every charity organisation has got a separate little website or a separate little directory or a separate, even in a city as small as Brighton, actually getting help for your specific situation is
finding out about available help as well.
It's really it's hard, and I think those of us, like people like you and me, who know about technology, like if I didn't know about meetups, you would tell me about it. Like, we talk about, have you seen this thing? This is new, da da da. But we are, and we expect technology to provide us with a solution. Even the way we talk to our podcast hosts, it's like, we could do this, but do you do this? Have you got a button for this? Because our expectation of the service that they should offer is higher, probably.
Or we just understand what sort of things it could do, which most people probably don't.
So it's like, so is there something about helping? In our technology episode, I think it was, you talked about non-technology afraid people versus non-technology afraid people, and there'll be the technology afraid people will sort of cease to evolve. They'll just be existing separately and differently. Is there something we can do in that sort of
to bring them in?
Use what we know to bring them in? Because one of the other conversations I had in Brighton, obviously a lot of my knowledge is Brighton centric. Yeah. But so, for example, Brighton, who recently there's been a news article that says we are the most hipster city in the world. We have 16% of our population can't go online.
16?
Yeah, that is almost twice
Brighton's population.
Yeah, the national average is of adults. The national average is 10%. In Brighton, it's 16%.
Why?
Well, it's like I think that's amazing. And, for a city that considers, like we host a few tech conferences, we've got a few quite prominent, even famous agencies, digital agencies. We've got the amazing restaurants, Brighton. But we have a city where 16% of our adult population can't get online. And I think, that is a thing that could be fixed. Not necessarily for Brighton.
The freaking municipal Wi-Fi, and I guess you need a device.
You need a
Yeah,
device.
Come on, like
It is
flipping
about
heck.
what it is about. A lot of it, there is a strong element of device and connectivity for sure,
Yeah.
which I think money can solve completely. However, there is
then-
also the fear,
Yeah, just not knowing,
not knowing what to
having
do. I mean, I have arranged to meet. I need to follow up properly. The person who heads the team here, like they're a not for profit, but I think council funded, that is working on. They run courses in the library and try to get people online. But the interesting thing that he told me is that often you'll go into organisations and talk to the staff, and the staff, while perfectly able to use the bit of technology that they have to use for work, outside of that don't use technology. So they're not technically digitally excluded, but they won't shop online, for example, or they're
They just
afraid.
don't see the value. They don't see like,
No.
oh, fine. I've always been fine without it.
Yeah, I don't need that. Oh no, but then they'll steal your identity or whatever, or valid fears. Don't get me wrong, but
yeah, you have to know what you're doing.
you
Don't
have to-
write your
yeah.
password out on a bit of paper and put it with you on the front of your phone. Like,
no. But
yeah.
but
I mean, my grand plans
Yeah.
are: can we just just buy an island and set up a new country with a proper computer system and proper welfare state? Just bring a few hundred people on, just kind of a new country.
I think this is this is the other thing I was thinking about, and I can't remember what triggered. I don't know if I was listening to something Malcolm Gladwell was going on about, or I was listening to the draft of our podcast. I can't remember, but there's a thing about legacy systems and older societies that just makes. I think I was listening to the bit where I was going on about how hard digital transformation is, and that it's just a lot of it is just a slog.
Yeah.
But the slog involved when you've got, in the public sector, contracts that last for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years.
Yeah.
You've got to wait for these things to expire. And then the amount of effort involved in shifting them is just... And then, you've got to set up a program board and a project board and another board and a this board and a that board. And all these controls need to be in place. But we're not able to be at all nimble. If you've
I just
got
want to start from scratch. I've had enough. Like no more laws. All laws started from like a data style procedural. I don't know, something declarative language that can then be automatically kind of understood. No lawyers.
Yeah.
Just make good investments in things that lots of people need.
And
share them, like crowd sharing, kind of like equipment and stuff. Like, I love that tool. Like, you can borrow a tool from equip thing libraries for objects. Like books, it's not so much, but like thing libraries would be really handy. Like,
yeah, definitely.
And then just like this is actually a conversation I've been having at work. Was like we're setting up like contracts on the blockchain, and you sell shares in your company, and they are kind of embedded in the blockchain and transferred on there. But then there's a lot of kind of hair being pulled out about fitting in with the existing legalities or legal infrastructure, or like kind of fitting cryptocurrency stuff with fiat currencies, which pounds, dollars, and I just think they don't mix, and you just have to kind of jump into the lawless world and just kind of embrace that and see what emerges. But like, even just you start from like crypto and see what emerges when no one can enforce anything from the sort of legacy land. And hopefully, you still get institutions trusted, like new ways of establishing relationships, and kind of accountability, but they don't have any of that legacy of the volumes and volumes of legal precedents, but the trouble is, like, all that's important as well, but maybe you could like import that in as test cases and then just see how well your systems, that much more effectively, concisely designed systems, perform against all of that kind of volume of test cases. I'd be interested to do something legal at some point, but I've got no background in it, no understanding of it. But I feel like the next thing we could automate out is the legal profession, because it's just they're being computers, but computers should be computers.
I've got a very tech savvy lawyery friend that maybe I should put you in touch with.
Okay.
Have a chat with her. I did just, I think, on the subject of thresholds, my threshold for sort of dramatic change, or scrapping everything and starting again, very high. I'm not going to be a early adopter of that approach.
New island.
New island, new planet. No, I don't know why that kind of doesn't sit with me. Don't know.
Yeah, but not even Brexit wasn't even enough of it. For me, I was like, okay, fuck this. I want a new island. I want a new place.
No, we've spoken before about my, health-threatening loyalty levels. Just don't give up that easy. I'm not saying that that's giving up easily, but I just, that's not who I am.
I am someone that tries to advise other people that sometimes rebuilding from scratch isn't always the right answer, and it's something that programmers want to do a lot. Like, something gets to a certain level of like difficulty to maintain, and the first impulse is we've just got to start again. But then you just end up spending a load of time ending up with a slightly different set of things that are really painful to maintain. I'll link to a David Hennemeyer Hansen, the creator of Ruby on Rails, which is a popular programming framework, which is a way of writing code where someone else has done some of the work for you. Just that's what that is.
Quickest definition.
But he talks about, legacy. We have this idea that legacy code is this terrible thing, but it's not the code. The code didn't get worse. You just got better. So you don't just kind of don't hate your former self, but also just don't throw everything away just because now you do it in a different way. So I kind of have to remind myself of that. Like, sometimes you can sort of incrementally improve something, and you just have to kind of do one chunk at a time.
I was speaking to a developer about this week. He was a bit frustrated. He was like, now that I've done it, I know I should have done it completely differently. I was like, well, that's fine. That's normal. That means you learn and you were analysing. We're good. Leave it. It's like, but yeah, that sounds like a link I should send him. I was reminded when you were talking about thing libraries about this. Somebody I used to work for started a thing called Ecomodo, and I was going to send it to you as there is this thing, and that's like a lending library of things, a citizen to citizen type thing. But yeah, I see that they've closed it, and in 2015, I did occasionally dip into it. But I never used it. I looked at it because I knew it existed, and it sort of fits with what I do. But like, I've spoken before about the Facebook group in my neighbourhood, and it is, even with strangers, you can do has anybody got that I can borrow for the afternoon? And often you will get a very quick response. And then you can just, has anyone got I borrowed a juicer before because somebody kept telling me I needed to do juicing. And I was like, I bought one of those gadgets before, and I get into it for a bit and then I don't use it. So I'm going to borrow one because I bet someone else has got one in a cupboard that they haven't used. And I got offered 3.
There's loads of things like that.
Yeah, so loads. But the idea of this Ecomodo thing, it'd be interesting to get in touch with her on her analysis of why it didn't work. And then or why they closed it, and then maybe we could have another go at that, because that's quite. I'm all up for things because that has an element of community in it.
Yeah, community. It's eco-y.
And it's eco-y because it's a street of 20 doesn't need 20 drills that only get used once a year to put up a shelf.
Yeah.
So
I've got 3 drills.
Have you?
Partly because I lived in another country and I didn't have my drill with me, but I don't know why I needed the other one.
Well, you should freak all that shit. Somebody might need one.
Yeah, but then you got to fucking deal with people that can't spell.
You are such an ass.
I know, but it's so frustrating. Like you get that message, is like you send them the postcode and they're like, "Where's that?" And you just go, I can't be fucked with this." I know. I mean, bad person.
You are a bad person.
Fucking hell! Can you just spell? That's not how apostrophes work.
That's why I'm not indulging this. I gave away a few things at the weekend. They went quite quickly. Again, I seem to give away good stuff because it goes like, phew.
Well, yeah.
But I did Google this thing. It was a sound bar for a TV that I got free with a projector. And I just don't need it. And I'd been meaning to give it away to a family member, but nobody wants it. So it's like, right, it's going. And today I was delighted that I found the remote control for it. So that's good. And then I've tried to sell 2 other things because I know they have value. And I was like, no, do you know what? I'm going to put these on eBay. And then people keep asking me questions about them. And I'm like, just, do you want it? And they keep asking me how I've put local delivery only because it's quite bulky. And they want to know how much it's going to cost to post it.
See, that's the thing. I like the idea of like social integration with, people I like. I'm gonna like.
I don't want to give away things to people I like.
No, I want to give it away to people. I just don't want it to be like because they can't. I just don't want to have to then run home in the pouring rain because I've got to be somewhere at a certain time and they couldn't give me an ETA until it was already too late and now I'm wet and they kind of seem to have strange expectations and don't seem to quite appreciate that I've gone out of my way and I'm giving them something for free. So what the why are you being a dick about it? It's like if I just need to meet one like person I like doing this, and then it's fine. But like I just keep meeting people. I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake, mate. So it's just safer to just shut myself off from the world and never talk to anyone.
It's much safer to just put out a podcast and just leave it hanging.
Just say a rhetorical podcast, rhetorical songs. I wrote some lyrics this week.
Did you?
Quite a lot. Which was interesting. I was listening to a rapper talking about his life, and I was like, I haven't really talked about my life. And I think if someone asked me, what's this album about? And I said, oh, it's about this experience that I had. That's quite an unusual experience. I think people would be like, oh, yeah, that sounds interesting. I'd quite like to learn about your experiences. So I started trying to just describe my experiences in songs. So maybe I'll record some of those and come out with something cool.
I look forward to that. I like it.
I've got no time ever, but
Nobody's got time. So, did we have any grand plans? Maybe we had some ideas.
Well, I mean, it's only attempt 1, so
yeah, true.
we'll I think we've got a couple of seeds of possibilities. Also, from from the other week, I noticed I had a couple of little app ideas that I started. That then it was like, the nothing is easy. The one like the newsreader that kind of automatically turns the page, and the green. What was it? Green something, little green, like the sort of competitive eco awareness, eco actions. Just like, this person has declined 6 plastic straws this month, and I've only done 3. It's just kind of gamifying and having a high score table of that sort of thing. So I kind of bootstrapped 2 React Native projects, and then I was like, why? Still seems really annoying, and it's going to take ages to do any of these. So, never mind. Pick my battles better before I jump in.
We'll do something. We'll do this. It's going to be good.
New country.
I think we're done now.
All right. Thanks, listener, for listening to our podcast. We hope you will continue listening. And if you did like it, there are 1 or 2 little things that, I'm not telling you have to, but I don't know, Ivanka's got some things she wants you to do. I don't care, I don't really mind, but she seems to, do you reckon, what can they do?
Well, you do care. Stop pretending.
I do care more than anything.
I would like you very much to subscribe to our podcast. And really, truly, you can subscribe everywhere. Spotify, YouTube now. Yeah. Though we don't have we haven't got our proper URL sorted out yet. We're working on it, but you can find us on YouTube. Obviously, Apple Podcasts, Google Play in America land. Everything. We are everywhere. So there is no technical barrier to you listening to our podcast or telling your friends about it.
We challenge you to find a platform that we're not on.
And if you can
at this
tell us
point.
what it is, we will sort
We
it
will
out.
fix it.
In fact, what we'll do one better than that, we'll get the marvellous people at our podcast hosting, Pippa, to sort it out, because they're very good at
Pippa.io. Yeah,
adding
they have been very responsive.
They have, and they add loads of buttons for us, which is marvellous. So yes, so do that. And also, if you really, really would like to, we would be delighted if you would vote for us in the British Podcast Awards.
BritishPodcastAwards.com/vote.
It is, yes.
Yeah.
So
Search for Ivanka.
search for Ivanka, because I am unique and special, and therefore
Yes.
easy to find.
It's all loads of V's and K's that don't come together that often in a word
No.
on a British website.
So you can find me, then you can vote for me. And I do know people have been voting for us. And to those people, thank you very much. And
Yes, thank you. I need to keep. For some reason in my head it was like, oh, we did that last week. That's probably over. When's the deadline? When does that
17th
close?
of May.
17th of May 2018 is the deadline.
Keep
so
voting. Vote,
Please.
vote. Please,
go there and help us get on the map.
Yeah. And
Because we put a lot of work into this.
we do, and we enjoy it, and we're now hearing from people who tell us they also enjoy it. So it'd be marvellous to keep doing it.
Spread it.
And
The love.
yeah, and then maybe you can all help us come up with some grand plans that are actually going to make a difference in the world. So yes,
Yeah.
contribute. Tell us when we're wrong as well. More importantly,
Yeah. Because we know we might. We might be wrong.
we do know that we might be wrong. So yes,
It's
please.
just with everything, I want to start caveating. Could be wrong about this, but where can people find you, Ivanka, as a person, an individual?
As a human person, you can find me at Ivanka on Twitter.
You can find me. I am a deluded idiot, and my website is michaelforestmusic.com. So thanks everyone for listening. Help us and vote for us, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye
Bye. 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 Ian Farrell sent me a link to that sort of plastic straws to be banned in the UK within the next couple of years. He went, the campaign worked.
There we go.